Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of stories and conversations on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts, Peggy, a licensed clinical social worker and certified breastfeeding peer counselor,
and Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist with a perinatal mental health certification. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers and survivors of postpartum depression and anxiety.
We don't know about you, but we didn't grow up talking much about mental health in our families, and we want to change that now that we are mothers.
Together, with our clinical backgrounds and passion on the subject, we want to create a safe space for the AAPI community to discuss perinatal mental health issues.
And together, we want to break generational cycles in our own parenting journeys so that we can heal our inner tigress, a nod to the tiger moms before us. We are so happy you're tuning in here. Let's get started. Hello, listeners. Jasmine and I are thrilled to introduce our next guest, Tisha Kachhapati, a psychodynamic counselor based in the UK. And we're excited because we've both actually known her since high school, and now she lives across the pond. She's a mom of one, and we really wanted to try to get the perspective of a mother living abroad and her postpartum experience in that context, and how it inspired her biggest career change into psychodynamic counseling. Tisha, we'd love for you to tell us about your cultural background and your motherhood story.
Well, firstly, Peggy and Jasmine, thank you for having me. My background, I come from a Nepalese family. I am first generation born, second generation because my parents came for university. I grew up on the East Coast up until I think I was maybe 8 years old. And then I moved to California, where I lived literally until I got married. And then I moved to England. So I majored in university, which is what we call college in the States. I majored in business, and then I moved over. I started working in marketing, and then I stopped working because I had my kid and I wanted to be at least a very hands-on stay-at-home mom for the first 2 years. After having my son, I just noticed there was a whole bunch of differences from what I was seeing in friends who were having kids in the States. And that's really kind of what brings me here today, to kind of talk about all those differences that we've seen and to highlight how incredibly different, but also how incredibly difficult it can be for so many women.
What were some of the biggest differences? And also, did you expect that? When you're oh, I'm in the UK, maybe the healthcare is going to be better.
Nothing. I didn't know what to expect. If I'm being really honest with you, Peggy, 25-year-old Tisha did not know what she was getting herself into. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, she'll be fine. I don't have any roots really down. I don't have my career really started. My husband, who's 6 years older than I, he had his career started. So I was like, yeah, let's go ahead. It was definitely an eye-opening experience. Mm-hmm. It's very different. I remember one of the cultural shocks for me being when I went into a store, I think it was Sainsbury, and I was looking for rice. And the rice said Oriental rice. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Because we don't say that in America. That's considered kind of like a slur. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is going on here? But it's not considered a slur in the UK. Yeah.
So people will call you an Oriental girl? I want to not say
yeah, it's really weird. Mm-hmm. With some people, they recognize now, granted, this is 10 years ago, right? So I don't think we would see this in stores because there's a lot more awareness of what's allowed and what's not allowed, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But there's still some weird things here. It's definitely an experience. The healthcare system is very different. I used to have Kaiser Permanente. So I could email my doctor from, I think, 2007? I was able to email my doctor, no problem. And then I come to England and they're like, you need to call into your GP, which is your general practitioner. Your GP is not just a person. It's an actual office where there are doctors that you see. Yeah. So you would have to call in the morning of for an appointment. Otherwise, you wouldn't get an appointment.
Wow.
And then from there, you would have to be assessed by a GP to find out what you needed. And then from there, if they deemed it was, needed to get a referral, then they would refer you. Now, this was all really, really difficult when you were transferring from one country to another, and it was very different. But also, like, we pay upfront in America, whereas in England, although you do pay through your taxes, it's still very system based. So it's not going to have the same oomph. It's not going to have the same economical freedom, I suppose, that in the US we do. So it's not perfect, but it is good if you get a good doctor. And I feel like that's universal. Like, no matter where you go, if you get a good doctor who sees you as a person and they see, okay, this is something that really needs to be looked at, I can understand this, they will do a referral. But if you get a doctor who's like, I am tired, I'm exhausted, you're my 20th patient today, I want to go home, like, you're not going to get the care that you need.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a universal experience, I guess.
Yeah, it was very tricky, but it felt like I was going to the dark ages when I first came here. And sometimes it still does, because quite largely it still is like that.
Yeah. How soon after you moved to the UK were you pregnant?
Let's see. I moved to the UK in April of 2013, and I was pregnant in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
yeah, about a year later.
Wow.
No, it was a year and a half later, because my son was born in 2015 of April.
Okay.
Do they assign you like an OB along with like a general practitioner too? So you have to search for one? Okay.
They don't even give you an OB, really.
Oh.
Like, yeah, it's very different. So what they do is they will assign a midwife to you, right? And that midwife will literally come to your house. She'll take your bloods.
Wow.
She will, yeah. So it's very different, but it's kind of cool if the midwife is pretty good and she knows what she's doing. If the midwife doesn't know what she's doing, girl, I pray for you. And I definitely had a few of those where I was just like, ma'am, what are you doing? But anyways.
Oh, man.
What was good about some of these midwives, so they would come in, they'd be like, okay, they would have a checklist, like, you need to do this, you need this, blood work, we need to make sure that you're okay. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I think that's how they would cut down on these GP visits or even hospital visits. So I think that there is like a reason for why midwives are there. And I think that they're very valid. But I also think that there is largely an economical reason for them.
And is the midwife that sees you the one that will end up delivering your baby? Or is it like tons of midwives are coming in and out of your house?
I think most of the time it's supposed to be the same one, but it's not always the case. So you're supposed to have one midwife that is assigned to you. And I'm not sure if that's changed, like, because I now have an 8-year-old, so I'm not sure if that's changed at all or if that's been impacted, because the NHS has been impacted, especially in recent years. But yeah, it's largely supposed to be the same one. Now, she was not the one that was in the delivery room with me because I had to be induced because I was being monitored for like pre-diabetes. And I was like right on the cusp. They're like, you have pre-diabetes. I'm like, okay, does that mean that I get extra like scans? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, great. Because I was like, if that means you're going to pay more attention to me and the baby, I'm very happy for that. I was like, go for it. They're like, we're going to have to induce you. I was like, let's get to it when we get to it. So I had a consultant kind of check me as it went along. And she actually ended up being the consultant who did my cesarean section. So there was a nice kind of continuation because she knew me and it felt really comfortable because I was like, oh, I know this person. She knows my file. She knows like my history. So there was a bit of comfort there. But this can happen if you are in the same hospital doing the checks, but it's not always going to be the case. So, but again, I feel like this could be like a US and UK thing because, you could have an OB-GYN and they could be not on call that night, right? Or they could be on holiday when you go into labor.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did these visits with the midwives, like, did anyone during that time ever talk to you about postpartum depression or mental health or kind of just check in with you on that during your pregnancy and then letting you know that in postpartum, you want to be careful of what to look out for?
Not really, actually.
Okay.
Not really. I remember in the beginning, it was just about taking care of yourself to take care of the baby. Like the baby is the primary patient. And I feel like this might be a universal thing because I've heard this a lot with friends as well of how, when they're getting treated either before the baby or after the baby, a lot of the focus is on the baby, but not the mother herself. And what I also felt was, okay, it wasn't as strongly, of course, before the baby came because, you know, we were one, that wasn't a big deal. What I'm doing is for the baby, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But after the baby came, I remember asking them to check my stitches because I had quite a traumatic birth.
Okay.
And the midwife was like, I don't see any seeping. Everything should be fine. I was like, okay, that's valid because sometimes you can see it. But I definitely did not feel the level of care that there was before I had the baby. There was no there's no discussion about postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. And actually, I don't even think there was a word for postpartum anxiety like 8 years ago, really. No one really talked about it. I think they talked about more of baby blues and depression, but it
Right.
wasn't so deeply talked about as it is now.
In the UK, do they call it postnatal depression? I think it's the
They do.
PND is the term. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. 8 years ago, I can imagine like even less people probably talked about it than they're talking about it now. So did you experience something like that in postpartum?
I did, except I didn't even recognize it until I was much further down the road. And I was like, why am I so anxious? I had definitely postpartum anxiety because I was so anxious about taking my child outside. I remember one mom said, oh, my newborn, who was at the same age, ended up getting actually, she wasn't a newborn then. I'm going to correct myself. She was about 6 months old then. And she said, oh, my child's just gotten hand, foot, and mouth disease. Oh, that was enough to send me off and lock myself in the house for those 2 weeks.
Oh, no.
I was like, we're not going anywhere. We're not talking to anybody. We're not touching anything. That fear of something's going to infect my child and, something as horrible is going to happen to him. It was the fear of, if I go out, am I going to forget the diapers that I need? If I really needed to, I could have bought diapers from any corner store. But I was terrified that I would forget everything and not know what to do. And I think part of what fed into that was the fact that I was still very new to the country at that point. So I wasn't used to certain things. Now, if you were to ask me, I'd know where to go everywhere. I mean, at that point, I didn't even drive in this country. So I was very anxious about what my surroundings were and how that was going to affect my child.
And did your husband go back to work because I don't know what like paternity leave is like. So are you like watching your baby alone during this time too?
So my husband, he started working from home when I was pregnant, which was actually really sweet.
Yeah.
But it also meant that he worked some insane hours. And meaning since he joined that company, I think maybe when I was like 7 months pregnant, it meant that by the time I gave birth, he only had 3 days of paternity leave.
Oh.
And that was given as a gift from the company.
Oh my gosh.
So he didn't have any time off. He would take some time during his day, like, maybe a lunch break to like come and see me, or like 5 minutes to come and see me and the baby and see how we were. But there was not much that he could do. Luckily, I lived with my in-laws. So my mother-in-law, she was such a help to me. Like if bottles needed to be washed, she would be like, just put them on the side. I will do it. If food needed to be made, she would do it. She would help me take care of the house. My mother and my father were there for a month. So that was really helpful as well. Actually, this reminds me, I'd totally forgotten about this. At one point after having my child, they put me into the ward and I was the only person who'd had a cesarean. And I feel that they probably didn't realize how difficult it was for me because I had a lot of blood loss as well. So I was very weak. And they were struggling because they went through a huge shift in personnel and they were understaffed. And I found out this through one of our family friends who was actually working the ward. She was non-medical, but she was working the ward. So she warned me. She's like, just to let you know, they're understaffed. So it might be a bit difficult for you. So I actually bargained with them. I said, look, y'all are going to be understaffed. I am not about to play with this. I've got 4 parents at home. Send me home. So they sent me home with a whole bunch of medication. They sent me home with shots to keep me from like getting sepsis.
Oh my goodness.
And those big ones that go into your stomach. Have you seen those? Yeah. So they sent me home with those. I had to do them myself, but I was like, if I can deal with them taking a baby out of my stomach, I can deal with the needle. It's
wow.
fine.
Wow. But you had your support at home. That's why you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that made a really big difference.
So when did you realize, you mentioned it took you a while to realize you were having anxiety or just sort of like postpartum mood disorders. At what point did you actually realize, because you said it took a while, but can you give us a better timeline of maybe when that surfaced?
I don't think I really started to notice how high functioning I was with this anxiety until maybe like 8 months in when I
Wow.
went back to California for Christmas.
Mhm.
It was because I remember I went to my GP and she had known me because I was like in and out of the office with, my son. And she was like, I love his outfit. I was like, thank you, sis. But, she was like, okay, like what's going on with you, Tish? And I was like, I am miserable. Things aren't right with me. This is not me. And I was just like, I really think I need to be on medication. And I had been on antidepressants like when I was in university, but I think it was only for like 6 months or something like that. And then I like evened out and I was like, okay, I'm all right. Maybe I wasn't, who knows? So far, so good. But I told her, I was like, look, I think I need to get back on this because this is not normal and I don't feel right. So she was like, I think you just might need a holiday. And I was like, well,
Wow.
yeah. I think that should tell you about how well some people mask. And actually, I think that's really enabled me to work very effectively with some of my clients who mask really well because I can recognize that because, game recognize game. But she said, why don't you see how it goes? I will write you a prescription. You take this with you and see how it goes. So I was there. I stayed there for about 4 weeks at the time because, I wasn't working. Siraj had a little bit of holiday. So, we milked it. And I stayed there for a week and I was like, I'm not feeling any better. This holiday's not doing anything for me. I was glad to see my parents. I was glad my son was playing with his cousins and like meeting my cousins. But things still didn't feel right.
What was the biggest sign, if you don't mind?
Probably crippling anxiety when it came to going anywhere, feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to see these people, but I can't bear the thought of getting ready and what might happen there. What if I say the wrong thing? What if my son starts screaming and crying throughout the entire time because he was teething as well. So he was miserable. And I was like, I don't want us both to be miserable. Like we could just be miserable inside when nobody sees.
Yeah.
So, what we ended up doing is, when I say we, what I ended up doing is I ended up taking medication within a week of staying home. And by the time I went back, it had been 3 weeks. So I was feeling a lot better. And my doctor was like, see, I know you're all right. And I was just like, I'm on the medication. And that kind of messed with me for a little bit because I was like, why doesn't she see that?
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're questioning yourself.
It.
Yeah.
So it really made me question it. And, now as a mental health professional, I realize there's so much that doctors don't know about mental health. And I think my cousin really highlighted this because she trained as a pediatrician in Ireland. And she was like, yeah, they only really do like 1 or 2 classes on mental health. I was like, bro, that explains so much. But it's like, it's just the bare, it's just the bare minimum. It's just touching on it. And, to be fair, isn't that what most of university is? It teaches you the bare minimum on things, and it's up to us to expand that knowledge.
Yeah.
So unless the practitioner is like, I'm going to focus on this, or this will be my clinical focus, you get like a little bit of everything and you go from there. Because it sounds like your GP or whatever it's called, like didn't even think to refer you out at all. Like if that's even an option.
Yeah, and I think part of this is also the impact that the NHS has as well, because, every single time, and I could be wrong on this, by the way, but from what I understand, it's every single time a doctor has to refer somebody out, like there is some kind of tally that needs to be made for like the GP office. And so my theory is like, okay, well, maybe you have to eventually pay to refer, because why would they be so reluctant to refer otherwise?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of questions about that. And it's been really tricky, especially with the pandemic, because people did miss out on a lot of referrals and now we're seeing that influx. But in terms of mental health, I think there's a huge miss. And people are seeing that now because a lot more young people, for example, are going to their doctors and saying, I'm absolutely miserable and suicidal. And the doctor's going, oh, okay, well, here's some fluoxetine. Yeah.
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 You don't need a referral to see like a therapist though, right? Or did you have to find your own
No.
therapist?
I found my own therapist. And I think another really nice thing about me having to find my therapist is because I was training to be one.
Mhm.
And for the program that I was in, they were like, you can't train to be a therapist unless you have your own therapist. And here
Oh.
are the requirements for what your therapist needs to be able to do. So basically, if you're studying psychodynamic counseling, you need a psychodynamic counselor and you need to be
Mm.
in therapy with them for at least a year and a half. So she
Wow.
helped me work out some really good kinks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did you decide to pursue going into psychodynamic counseling?
Interestingly, it was around the time my son was 2.
So later.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was itching to get back to something. I just didn't know what. And I remember walking into my GP and asking the secretary. I said, "Is there some kind of mental health program or counseling or support for new moms because I'm really struggling and I need some help?"
Hmm.
And she said, "No, honey, there's nothing in this area. Like you would have to just figure it out on your own." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I walked out and I was like, "Okay, well, what do I do?" And I was like, I
Wow.
don't know what to do. And I didn't know where to look at the time. And I was like, I can't be the only one. I was like, there's no way I can be the only one. So I started kind of looking at a psychology program. And I was talking to my cousin about this and I was like, I'm looking for the psychology program. And I was like, I could apply for it, but I don't know if I should. And my cousin went, "What are you waiting for? It's crossed your mind. You obviously want to do it." So I was like, okay. So I pulled up my sleeves and I started writing my letter and I did my application and I sent it in and then I got an acceptance letter from them and I was like, oh, for sure it's on. So that's pretty much where it started. And I wrote in my letter, I was like, what's really motivating me to start psychology is like my postpartum experience. Like there is not enough knowledge about how to help people when they're in severe stress. And my birth was very traumatic. Like I code blued. I lost a lot of blood. And
Oh.
it was really traumatic. Like they had to cut after they were trying to pull my son out. So I dilated fully.
Oh.
So it was like 10 centimeters. I did all the work, cue Rihanna's work song in the background. Right? I was like, okay, she's done it. Work, work, work. She's done it. She's done all the work. I was like, okay, I've done what I'm supposed to do. This boy did not want to come out. Like he was cozy. And I tell you right now, girls, it's the same thing he does every morning when I need to take him to school.
He was like this
But
from the start.
he was like this from the start. Exactly. That's what he can tell his therapist in the future. I didn't want to leave. She made me. But he didn't want to leave. Like, they try to pull him out from the
Like the
from
door
the
is
bottom.
wide open.
Yeah. It's wide open. I'm gonna leave the door open. Like it was horrible. So as much as this is clearly my coping mechanism, but like now that it's like 8 years down the line, I can laugh about
Yeah.
it. But it was very difficult because one of the OB-GYNs, there was like I think 3 in the room. One of them was a male and he was like, he's like a square peg in a round hole. And at this point, like, yeah, that was my exact reaction too, except I'm pretty sure there was a glimmer of I will stab you in the back of my head because he became very silent all of a sudden because I went from cracking jokes to very silent. And I'm telling you, I couldn't move, right? Like once they give you the epidural, you can't move from here downwards, like from your shoulders downwards. And I seriously think I probably would have smacked him if it hadn't been for that. But they tried to pull him down. It didn't work. Wow. So they're like, okay, Tish, what we're going to do is we're going to do a cesarean section. And we're going to bring him up and out. And I was like, do what you got to do, man. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
So they did. But that's where we got into trouble because there was so much pushing and pulling that I had a lot of internal bleeding. And that consultant that I had, I think I was very, very lucky that she was on call that day because I cannot say more than that. She was brilliant. Like you could tell how fast she was working and you could see how stressed my anesthesiologist, who also, I think she was Indian. She was also a person of color. I think actually, I don't know what her ethnicity was. She might have been Bengali, but she was also a person of color. So, as a person of color in a room full of like white midwives and doctors, to have two doctors who are like on your body and working to keep you alive, like that feels very heartwarming. So yeah, that it was a very interesting experience, I should say, but also terrifying because I remember feeling very faint, and my anesthesiologist was like, "Tisha, are you there?" I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Stay awake." And I was like, "Okay." And the baby came out. He was fine, full head of hair, as these Nepali babies do. It's probably why I had so much acid reflux. Yeah.
People say
I had a lot of acid reflux.
My daughter had a full head of hair too. I didn't have any acid reflux.
I'm so jealous, Jasmine.
I'm sorry, not to make it worse, but I just feel like these are just like funny, like old wives' tales. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably what keeps us going and laughing about things.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, these old wives' tales. Yeah. But after all of that, maybe this is very British, or maybe they didn't want me to freak out. I don't know. But one of the ladies like hit the button on the wall, and she's like, "Code blue, I need some blood, please." And I was just like,
so
what
calm.
in the world?
At that point, you didn't know that you were coding? Like you didn't know at that point?
No, I didn't know. Wow. I just knew I didn't feel that good. I was like, maybe I'm just tired. No, maybe she was bleeding out on the table.
And because you have no reference for like how you're supposed to feel during birth. You're like, this
exactly.
Yeah, your whole body is just,
Yeah. And at that point, especially because most of my body was numb as well, so I didn't know really what was going on.
Wow.
But I could say, though, about the consultant that her stitches were impeccable, because my friend who ended up getting, like, I think she had her appendix taken out, my stitches were better than her stitches. So I was like, okay.
Wow.
I was like, I like it. Thank you.
I like it.
I like it. Thank you.
Oh man. I mean, living through a traumatic birth, I feel like it's a big thing too. Like going through a traumatic birth, it can also lead to postpartum depression, anxiety, because sometimes PTSD, because you're sort of just reliving that scary experience.
Oh no, it's absolutely PTSD.
Right? Because it was near-death experience, and you have to do everything to sort of be survival mode after that.
Oh, and then they give you a baby to take care of.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, and that's the crazy thing. Yeah. Good luck. Here you go. Bye.
Like you almost died, but here's your baby.
Yeah. Good luck and don't mess it up. Like, and that's the thing. A lot of people think PTSD means that you've like been a soldier and that you've gone to war, but it's very much as relevant for things that are very traumatic, like childbirth, like almost dying in childbirth. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that too sprinkled in there.
Did that make you feel like, I know some people who've gone through it that are just like, I never want another kid again, because I just couldn't put myself through that again.
Yeah, it definitely made me feel like that for a while. And when I warmed up to the idea of having another child, I then realized how much it had traumatized my husband. Because my husband was sitting there, standing there over me the entire time, watching my eyes roll to the back of my head, realizing there was a curtain that just separated me from like my insides all over the table. And he was holding this newborn, and he was like, am I going to have to do this alone? And thinking, I can't bear the thought of you dying on the table.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Jasmine, I see that's really made you emotional.
Sorry. You're playing therapist right now.
I know, I'm playing therapist.
Yeah, that's
no, but these things can make us really emotional. Like, honestly, now it's making me emotional too. Dang.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think this is really good because it touches on what we don't hear. You know, in the postpartum experience, is what the husbands watch us go through.
Yeah,
and how it affects them.
You're absolutely right.
It's interesting I think after all of that, because like you told us kind of your postpartum story first and then the birth story. And now when I'm hearing it, it's like the reaction from the GP and stuff just doesn't align. It's like, did they look at the medical history? Did they see that you coded? Did they see all these things and still be like, you just need to go on a holiday, like.
Yeah. Exactly.
how those things don't align at all. And even
Yeah.
like what support, for your husband, like that's traumatic for
Mhm.
him. Does he get any kind of
Mhm.
mental health support? And how it's
Mhm.
just kind of glossed over. And
Yeah.
no matter what country you're in, that it's just this like, cool, you're just feeling a little, your hormones. It's just your hormones
Mhm.
because the baby's
That's
here.
just motherhood for you,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
yeah.
I
know.
feel like it's even more specific if you fall into like a certain demographic. Like
Mm.
if you're like middle class and you come from like a two-parent family, oh sorry, you're in a two-parent family, you've got a husband or like you're the husband and you have a wife. If there's two of you and there's children, either one or more, people think, "Oh, you're stable enough. That's fine. That's okay." But they don't look at the bigger picture that mental health does not discriminate.
Right.
It infects anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
And I specifically am using the word infected because sometimes that can be exactly what happens. It can take hold and it can completely just corrupt everything that you find beautiful in life before you know it.
Mhm.
And that's why mental health support is so very important.
Mhm.
That's a great way to put it, infecting. Because I think
Yeah.
like it also makes it more real that this thing you can't see and you can't feel is really a disease,
Mhm.
which I think for me was part of my healing in accepting that this was not a character flaw, but it was a disease that had taken over. That this wasn't me. Like that's not. This is not who I am, but I
Mhm.
was infected, like you said, by something that had taken over, and I had to get treatment for it. And that there was treatment that you could get well. I mean, I see you now. You're like, laughing about it. And you're bubbly and happy, and no one on the surface would probably ever be able to tell that you went through something so dark as well, where you felt miserable, like you said.
And that's also what comes with a lot of people who are like high functioning, because
Mm.
when we use the word high functioning we think, oh, okay, that's good, you can function really well, but it's actually the worst. And I tell people this for like who have, for example, high functioning depression or anxiety even outside of postpartum. It's because you're really good at hiding how bad you feel, and you're really good at masking how awful things are for you under the guise of a smile.
Mhm.
And that's really painful. Like imagining how it was for Tisha in 2016, like the Tisha I am now in 2023 is very different from the 2016 Tisha. And I feel really bad that she had to struggle through that and she felt like she couldn't talk to anybody about
Do you think hiding and silencing that also comes with perhaps another layer, a cultural layer of how you were raised?
I think absolutely. We are lauded for persevering. I mean, it comes down to even the way we study and our work ethic, for example. The more you are able to balance, the more successful you are, in the eyes of the culture.
Mhm.
So if we were to say, actually, I'm struggling, that's really hard, that might be perceived as weakness.
Mhm.
And we don't want to inconvenience our parents or make them feel worried about us more, because that would be the absolute worst thing. Oh, she's stable, she has, she's been married, she has a baby, everything's good. We don't want them to worry anymore. And that was on my mind. I was like, I am thousands of miles away from my mom.
Mm.
Mm.
I don't want to worry her about this. I don't want to worry my dad about this. And so that causes then for you to keep a hidden boat. Actually, what would be good is if you open up and say, hey, I'm actually struggling. Did you have similar struggles to this? Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
I really need some comfort.
And I don't think our parents' generation, with their layers of cultural, generational traumas, they're not equipped to have that sort of conversation or discussion. And Peggy and I have
Mm.
talked about this, like sometimes even the language, like how do you even
Mm.
say like antidepressant in Chinese, Peggy? I don't know.
Mhm.
Mm.
I barely know the word for depression.
I know. Like, I can't
What's the
remember
word for
that one.
anxiety? I don't know.
I don't know. The
And
closest one I
so
have is like
how
nervousness. It's like, I'm just
Mm.
nervous, which like
yeah.
minimizes it,
But
right?
it's
Yeah.
not, yeah, it's not quite the same,
Yeah.
right? And so how do we talk to our parents about this? And I think I had seen recently some I don't know if it was a study or a news article saying that like a lot of these postpartum mood disorders can be genetic. It can be genetically linked. So if your mom or her mom had something similar, then it could potentially pass down to you.
Mhm.
And I don't I feel like when I listen back on my mom's story and things she's told me, like now looking back, I'm like, I feel like there is a pretty high chance she had gone through postpartum depression, being in a new country, kind of like you, for the
Mhm.
first time, and then just giving up everything to have this baby while, they're still students and they have no money and nothing really, and leaving their entire family behind, right? So
Mhm.
I think she went through something similar and she probably couldn't tell me about that to warn me about it.
Mhm.
Because maybe she didn't even have like a name for it, because it's not even talked
Exactly.
about in those communities of like, there is something
Mhm.
called
Yeah,
postpartum depression. I don't think
Yeah.
it's talked about even in their generation and with their,
exactly.
I think there's just this expectation for mothers to just mother. And they
Yeah.
don't talk about
Mhm.
anything else that happens during it too. Because I thought about that too with my mom. Of my mom's mom passed away when I was 6 months old, and so my mom mentions her
Mm.
being very sad during that time when I was a baby. And I just thought it was, and it could have been right, it could have been just depression from grief, but also how does that compound on top of you just had a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Had your mom ever talked about her postpartum experience with you?
My mom had, but very briefly. I remember my mom said that she and my father had faced like at least 10 years of infertility. And then
Wow.
I came along. So I always joke that I'm the miracle child.
Wait,
Clearly,
do you have a sibling above you?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm the only child.
Oh, so you really are the miracle child.
I really am. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm not. She likes to remind me of this all the time. My cousin and I, my youngest cousin, the one who did med school in Ireland, who I'll
Mhm.
talk about from time to time, she is also an only child. So we always joke that we're sisters that are only children
Aw.
because my mom and her mom are sisters.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So thank you. Um, but yeah, like she briefly did talk to me about it. She said, after I had you, then my mom came over and she took care of me for a few months and she went back. And I had to really adjust to life with you. Also, like one of her breasts, she like the milk ducts weren't working, so she
Mm.
could only breastfeed me off of one breast. So
Wow.
she always talked about the struggle and how much she wanted to breastfeed me for at least 6 months. And I remember as a new mom who was struggling to breastfeed, because my child did not like the boob, not one bit.
Mm.
I remember having so much respect, like newfound respect for her in that moment, going, dang, and you did that with one boob for 6 months?
Oh.
Wow.
Wow.
But she did struggle in ways because I don't think she drove at the time. No, I know she didn't drive at the time. Sorry. She didn't drive at the time. And she also had to take me everywhere with her walking or in a stroller. And she had to figure out her life. Luckily, by that time, she had friends in the area that did drive, at a community that she could call her own in America. But it was still quite difficult in a lot of ways. And I almost wonder if maybe there was that feeling of, I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed in Nepal
Hmm.
and been near my mother and my
Yeah.
siblings and the friends that I grew up with in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Would things have been different?
There's that parallel though between your
Yeah,
being a new mom in a new country. Your mom was a new mom in a new country. When you said she didn't drive, I was like, you just told us like you couldn't drive in the UK yet
Yeah.
either.
yeah,
Like, like the
yeah,
parallels. The only,
yeah.
I mean, I guess the biggest difference is there's not like a huge language barrier in the UK for you,
Mhm.
but there's so many
Yes.
other cultural barriers for you being there. Also, like,
Mhm,
did you have the social circles? Because if you had only been in the country
mhm.
for a year, like all your close friends are still back in the States and stuff. And
Yeah.
your parents came to stay for just a little bit, just like your mom's mom came for a little bit. Like
Mhm.
very similar stories.
Yeah, like I had a small group of people that I did know from the first like real corporate job that I worked in America. Um, but I didn't have any really good friends, like not like I have now, because with, of course, going back to university, you get those friends that you have from university. You get it from work, you get it from the playground, you have mom friends and things like that, or, your kids, they get along with other kids, so you get along with those parents. So my circle's widened a lot more than it was now. Sorry, than it was then. But in 2016, like I didn't know as many people as I did. So I did feel quite alienated. It was nice when I came back to the States for like short visits, but it was very different from how I had expected life to be, especially after having a child. So, in a way, I agree with you, Peggy. There is quite the parallel. And the more I sit with, being an immigrant in England, which is a very interesting word, I think, because as an American, you would expect to have the term expat, but because I am a person of color, the word immigrant is more kind of closely
Wow.
tied to my existence here.
Wow.
I never thought of
Yeah.
that. Wow.
Do you feel like, because I mean, if you said you grew up in California, it's a big melting pot over here.
Yeah.
How do you feel it is in where you are in the UK and being accepted as a person of color?
I think now, because I have a better understanding of who I am and my worth in the world, um, I can kind of walk into a room and be very confident about my place in it. However, that being said, where I live is very white. Like, I am the only person of color in the counseling team, and there's like 20 people in our counseling team.
Wow.
Yeah. And London, I think, is much more of a melting pot. So there's a lot more multi ethnic groups and lots of people. I mean, I remember when I did work corporate in London, very multi ethnic. So there was a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds. Very fun. But what's it called? The place that I live right now is it's starting to become more multi ethnic. So they're starting to really put on more programs to honor those different ethnicities. So I feel a lot more seen, and I do recognize that that's a lot more work that has happened in the past decade plus that I've been here. So it makes me feel also a lot more confident in going to a space and saying, "Hi, this is who I am. This is what I represent. This is what I can bring to the table." And although people see my skin color, they also can see past it, and I think that's really nice.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah. And I can't believe it's been a decade because you said 2013, I think, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're British now.
I'm British,
You
girl.
sound it. You sound it, girl. That's not how
To
you
our
sounded in high
listeners,
school.
Tisha did not sound like this. There's like
No.
a slight British accent that was not there when we knew her, and so I guess this is what happens when you live there for 10 years.
But I'll tell you what, you bring me home for like 2 weeks and she starts talking like an American, like 100%. Yeah.
It's like I said, it's hard. I feel like people who know you on the surface or just hear you talking like this, it's hard for them to ever imagine you went through something so difficult. And I think it's beautiful, though, that you've turned this sort of hard journey into something else to help others through it. And do you feel like you see more clients that are moms or that are people of color?
A mixture, actually. I see people that are very diverse. Either they have, either they're from a different background, right? So they're multi-ethnic, or they have a different sexuality, right? So I work with a lot of LGBTQIA plus clients. I also work with a lot of trans clients. I work with moms. I work with bereaved families. Um, so there's a lot of diversity there, and sometimes they interject. Sometimes I work with moms of young children. Sometimes I work with moms who have grown children, and the worry is always the same. It's a worry of, am I doing something to affect my child? Have I done something to hurt my child? And we always get into kind of the conversation of, what was it like when you were pregnant? What was it like when, after you gave birth to your child? How did that affect you? Because that's so significant, because although we're looking at a person, we're also looking at their journey into motherhood, which is very significant to who they are.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty deep. Peggy has always said, like, oh, it all stems back to childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like some of it also for us in a way might stem back to the beginning of motherhood, because it's almost like you were reborn again and you started a different path, identity, journey also at this significant point in your life.
And for you, even just the birth, right? The birthing process and even the pregnancy and experiencing that in a different country and how that's really
Yes.
shaped everything. And I find it so interesting that when you weren't getting the help you needed, you were like, I'm going to become the help. So you went to school for it. And even though you're not necessarily specifically working with perinatal or postnatal or postpartum, whatever word we want to use, it opened something up in you. Like to think you went from just like corporate, not having anything to do with mental health.
Corporate marketing, literally.
Yeah. Like such a career shift. I remember when I learned, because I've been in mental health for a very long time. So when I learned that you were going into it, I remember thinking like, oh, that's so interesting because that's totally not what Tisha was doing before. And then it just kind of felt so natural for you. And whenever you would share different things about it, I was like, how is she not a counselor this whole time? This is so perfect for you.
You know, actually, it's really funny you say that, Peggy, because when I started my university career, before I switched to business, I was doing psychology. Yeah. And I switched out of it because, and this is also a cultural thing, everybody in my family, so like my cultural group, so to speak, I don't want to say the word caste because it's really icky, but like my ethnic group is like really well known for doing business. So I was like, well, everyone's doing business. My cousins are doing business. My uncle has done business. My mom did business. Let me go into it, right? And it was the biggest mistake I ever made because I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Like, I love the idea of social media marketing because I think it's genius, but it's not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. This clearly is. I love helping people through situations, helping them to find their own solutions, because I don't necessarily give them advice and point things to do. I help them to recognize what's going on because you know yourself better than anybody else. But sometimes it helps to sit in a room with someone and go, I hear what you're saying. Do you think it's this? And to sit there and go, oh, actually, yeah, that might be. So it's really been full circle because I started with psychology, went to business, kind of got lost along the way. It kind of feels like a little bit of an Alice in Wonderland story. But at the very end of, the road, I get to where I need to be, which is home. So, yeah.
Oh.
It's interesting too, because the journey into motherhood is what reignited that for you. And recognizing you in your most vulnerable state was when you're like, this isn't what I want to be doing. I mean, of course you were spending some time being a stay-at-home mom, and then it awoke that part of you again.
I think what's really important also to note is that I was recognizing, as you do when you parent a child, that your own reactions to things are something that's very inherently you. And then you see yourself, for example, getting really angry because your child all of a sudden has knocked over a glass of water. And you're thinking to yourself, why am I reacting like this? And you think, oh, my parents reacted like this. Is this something I've learned? Or is this something that's actually me? This also really motivated me to go into counseling because I was like, number one, I need to work this out so it doesn't affect my child. Number two, I was like, I need to figure out why this is affecting me. So,
yeah, because he was 2, I think you said, right, when you started to go back in the quote unquote terrible 2.
Terrible 2s.
I mean, it's when they're getting their personalities, sorted out, their opinions, their identity too. They're finding themselves, and it can be hard because now you don't have that locus of control anymore. And I think it all stems back to like that control feeling. Some of us just feel like we really need that. And when it doesn't go our way, then we start like panicking or having anxiety about, okay, like what can I do to make this better? And I think in the best way that you did is to dig deep and see beyond like the reaction and give yourself grace that like maybe this reaction isn't me, but I learned it from somewhere, and how can I unpack that and make it better for my child going forward? So kind of the biggest gesture of love, I think.
Yeah, that's what I hope it is,
Well, one day he can listen back to this and then maybe figure that out.
And then he can talk about it with his own therapist.
Right? Yep. Well, this was so nice hearing like your transition and story. And where can people find more of you if they want to like learn more from you, or if we have any UK listeners for some reason that might
Which we
want to
do,
like
according to our
see
stats.
you? Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's
Nice.
awesome. So
Well, you can find me on Instagram at TMK Therapy, or you can find me on my website, which is www.tmktherapy.com.
that's
I actually
great.
had to think about that for a minute.
And we will link those in the show notes so people can
Mhm.
look that information up as well. Thank you, Tisha.
I wonder if I could just add one more
Oh,
thing.
yeah, of course.
Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge that I recognize actually how privileged I was to go back to university, how privileged I was to be able to be a stay at home mom and to have that support network around me even after I had my child. Because I recognize that some people don't have those options, they don't have that support network around them. And I think it's really important, especially for those who don't, for us to come even closer and to talk about situations like this, to talk about topics like, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, because it affects each and every one of us.
Yeah. I love that point because I think that we want to make sure it's not like that doesn't take away from what you went through, right? Like, and like we saw with your GP, it was like totally minimized because of your background and your socioeconomic status. And so don't want anyone to feel guilty. Like I shouldn't be feeling this way because I have all this help and I have all the luxuries and I have all this and that, because at the end of the day, like you said before, mental health does not discriminate on who you are.
No, it does not.
No, totally not. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah. We do like to end every episode with a what are you doing for your self-care this week? It's just a nice way to encourage our listeners to take care of themselves, but also get some ideas out there and end on a wellness note, I guess. I know it sounds so kitschy, but a little wellness note. So for that one.
So earlier, I was in my Pilates class and I was like thinking to myself, I really need to squeeze this in this week because I hadn't gone for like 2 weeks, and like a big part of my wellness is physical. Like I have to like do something physical, and doing this makes me feel good. So in class though, I realized like I can't do some of the stuff because I'm hungry. And I realize it's because I didn't eat breakfast this morning. So I'm like, man, I gotta really like take better care of myself in these things because, things I want to do later in the day, now I can't work out quite as well because I'm hungry. My stomach's grumbling and I'm like, I can't do a crunch because like all I can think about is how much I want to eat something right now. So I'm going to, if I have time this week, try to like maybe make some easy, like, they have those like eggs in like a muffin tin. You just like throw in like, ham or cheese and bacon, and then you can freeze them. So I think I want to just like meal prep almost a little bit and have something easy to go and grab for breakfast that's a little healthier so that I can function better the rest of the week.
They
So
say food
that's
is
mine.
medicine.
Yes, they do.
It is. Yeah.
Mine is, I don't know why mine feels so silly, but like, I don't know, little things like doing your nails. I did my nails.
That's not silly.
I know, but it's just like, I love doing my nails, and it's, I think what I also like about after doing my nails is then you get to look at it like for however long that you have your nails done. And I don't know, there's something about like just the act of doing my nails that feels really fun and, nice.
It's
like
a small little luxury.
It's a little luxury. So
you deserve that.
Yeah. Tisha?
I am right there along with you. I have my nail appointment for Saturday morning. I get acrylics. So I get acrylics and I get acrylics like every 3 to 4 weeks. That's like my little treat to myself. And one thing that I do on a nightly basis just to kind of get in touch with myself is I do a little bit of skincare. So whether that's, massaging my face, with a little bit of oil and like, cleansing it really well afterward, and then following up with, like your skincare, like your retinoids and like your cream. I spend like at least that 5 or 10 minutes for myself, just getting back in touch with me, who I am. And it's just my little time, my little space. Sometimes, it's not 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 minutes because I'm really tired. But I always make sure to have like this little good night ritual. It makes me feel better in the morning because I've, touched up my face and I've moisturize it because I tend to get very dry anyways during winter.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that little ritual for myself to say, you've had a long day, you deserve a little bit of rest. Here we are.
And your skin is your largest organ, so take care of it. That's great.
I love Tisha's skincare stuff. Like, my side note, whenever I watch like her Instagram stories, I'll go out and be like, oh man, I gotta go buy that now. She's like influencing me because her skin looks
cheap
amazing.
and cheerful stuff. Cheap and cheerful stuff is the way to go. Like, if it's good skincare, doesn't always mean expensive skincare.
Exactly. Yeah. But
Totally.
I love that, just taking care of yourself like that. Well, we've loved talking to you. We miss you because you're still across the pond. But this was such a great time to talk to you. Again, folks, check the show notes for any of the information if you want to find Tisha yourself. And just a reminder that this is a global thing that moms are going through. No matter where you are, we're all in this together and trying to get through it together. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We hope you have enjoyed Healing the Tigress in our conversations on maternal mental health in the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Please follow our show and our Instagram page to catch our latest episodes. We have so many fantastic guests and deep topics that we are so excited to cover soon.
If you enjoyed this episode or would like to support us more, please leave us a rating or a review and share this podcast with a friend to spread the word. Check out the show notes for more links. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope these conversations will help our AAPI mothers heal their inner tigress and honor their mental health as they deserve to. See you next time.